I've
That's
spent
what
the
Mike
last
said
35
to me.
years
He
driving a
was leaning over
specific
the
route to
chain
the
link
grocery
fence,
store
holding a
that
yellow
takes me
clipping
past
from
the
the
old
Gazette from
Greyhound station.
1987 like it
I
was
still
some
do
kind
it,
of holy relic.
even though the
I
store
didn't say
actually
anything
moved
to
across
him. I
town
couldn't.
back in
I just
2008.
kept digging my flathead screwdriver into the underside of my Toro mower, scraping at the dried mud and grass. I'm Lyle Pelletier. I'm 77 years old, and for 30-odd years, I ran Pelletier's Pedals and Gifts down on Main. Listen, if you're watching this, you probably know a man like me. Or maybe you are one. The kind of person who stands over the kitchen sink at 8:14 every morning eating burnt sunbeam toast so the crumbs don't get on the floor. I've spent my life stripping thorns off roses and crushing that green floral foam until my fingernails turned a permanent, dull shade of gray-green. My hands look like parchment now, thick-palmed and stained. But back in 1987, according to that newspaper Mike was waving at me, I was a master woodcarver. A real artisan florist, they called me. The thing is, and I need you to hear this, I've never carved a day in my life. Not a real bird, anyway. I have a set of general tools, no more. 822 carving chisels in my garage right now. They're in this cracked, mustard yellow plastic case on the third shelf, sitting next to a bottle of Prestone antifreeze. I picked them up this morning because my nephew was asking about them. They felt unnervingly cold. They have this metallic tang like the smell of pennies. I looked at the smallest V-gouge. It has a little nick in the blade from when it hit the concrete in 1988, and I realized I don't even know how to sharpen it. Arthur offered to teach me every Sunday for 9 years. I never let him. Arthur Vance was my father-in-law. He was a man who smelled like gray flannel cologne, that powdery sour musk, and he had hands that could make cedar look like feathers. But in 1982, when he was about 63, his hands started to go. A slow palsy. It started with a twitch, then a shake. Now, I want you to understand something. I told myself I was protecting him. That's what I said every time I signed my name to one of his birds. I'm protecting the family legacy, I think. I'm protecting Sarah's security. My wife, Sarah, we divorced in '94, though we stayed in the same duplex for 28 years until she passed. She deserved to be proud of the men in her life. That's what I told myself. It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? When you're trying to keep a shop afloat and the electricity bill is $46.12 over and you don't have it, you tell yourself a lot of things. I started believing the lie the night I entered the first tri-state competition. I took Arthur's work, a chickadee he'd labored over with shaking hands, and I wrote Lyle Pelletier on the entry form. I won $85. It paid the lights. Arthur just sat there in his folding chair, his neck looking thin and corded like a tortoise, nodding while I shook the judge's hand. For the next 9 years, that was our life. I was the face of the talent. Arthur was the ghost in the shed. I still do this thing, even now, talking to you, where I hide my hands in my pockets if anyone mentions handiwork. It's a habit I can't break. I even stopped wearing my wedding ring in 1992 because the weight of the gold felt like it was pulling my hand down toward those tools I couldn't use. I mean, you have to see it from my side. The man's hands were shaking like a leaf in a gale. If I'd put his name on those birds, people would have looked at them and seen the illness, not the art. They would have pitied him. I was keeping the name respected. I was making sure the mortgage got paid. It wasn't like it was for the family, you know. It was for them. I have a set of general tools no more. 822 carving chisels in my garage right now. They're in this cracked mustard yellow plastic case on the third shelf, sitting next to a bottle of Prestone antifreeze. I picked them up this morning because my nephew was asking about them. They felt unnervingly cold. They have this metallic tang, like the smell of pennies. I looked at the smallest V-gauge. It has a little nick in the blade from when it hit the concrete in 1988. And I realized I don't even know how to sharpen it. Arthur offered to teach me every Sunday for 9 years. I never let him. I remember sitting at the kitchen table in 1990. I was 41. I was counting out $163.45 in small bills from a weekend craft show. Arthur was sitting across from me, his prosthetic teeth clattering a bit when he breathed, because he'd stopped wearing the adhesive. I didn't even look up. I said, "Yeah, well, people like the detail on the feathers. I put in a lot of hours. The thing is, I wasn't in the shed carving. I was in there hiding his half-finished work so Sarah wouldn't see the mess he was making with his shaky hands. The shed always smelled like cedarwood-scented floor wax. To this day, if I walk into an Ace Hardware and smell that wax, my stomach rolls over like I'm on a boat in a storm. It's the smell of a man hiding things. I developed this slouch in my right shoulder during those years. I'd lean over the workbench when people were around, pretending to be deep in the process. I still walk that way. One shoulder higher than the other, like I'm still carrying a bird I didn't carve. I almost fixed it once. In 1985, we were at the State Woodcarving Gala. I'd won Best in Show for a cedar waxwing. I had this whole speech ready in my pocket. I was going to stand up and tell everyone it was Arthur. I got to the podium, and I looked out at the crowd. I saw Arthur in the front row, and then I saw Sarah. She was beaming at me. Not at him. At me. I felt this terror. I don't know how else to put it. I was afraid that if I spoke the truth, the light in her eyes would just go out, so I didn't. I just said, "I'm glad the hard work paid off," and I sat down. I told myself I was protecting her pride in her husband. Honestly, I was protecting the way she looked at me. You probably think I'm a coward. Maybe I am. But look at my friend Jim. Dimitrios Papas, we called him Jim. He was an old friend from the Florist Association back in '74. Greek guy, always had a yellow tobacco stain on his right pointer finger. Jim spent 30 years telling everyone his son was a partner in his landscaping business, but he never let the kid actually do anything. He wouldn't promote him because he wasn't ready. In 2018, Jim's business went under, all because he wouldn't let his son buy a $12,400 skid steer loader that would have saved them 18 hours of labor a week. Jim still tells people the economy killed him. He's living in a Section 8 apartment now, and his son hasn't called him in 6 years. I look at Jim and I think, what a stubborn old fool. He strangled that boy's ambition just to feel like the boss. There's this thing that happened at Arthur's funeral in 2011. It's almost funny, if it wasn't so pathetic. The local woodworking guild showed up. They insisted on placing a miniature wooden chisel in the casket with him. They said it was a tribute to the man who raised a master. I had to stand there and watch them bury him with a tool had spent his last decade watching me pretend to use. I almost laughed right there at the cemetery. It was so absurd. And then I felt that hot rash of shame crawling up my neck, and I had to walk away. I was in the backyard of the duplex, 2:44 p.m. I was scraping mud off the Toro with a screwdriver. Scree, 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 scree. That's when Mike leaned over the fence with that 1987 clipping. I stopped scraping. My tongue went dry, like it was stuck to the roof of my mouth. I couldn't swallow. I just stared at the rust on the mower blade. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at the paper. I just went back to the mower. I found a stubborn clump of dried fescue near the blade bolt, and I picked at it with my bare hands until my thumbs started to bleed. I didn't feel it. I just kept picking. I went inside after that. I made dinner. I ate my sunbeam toast. I lived my life for months after that like nothing had changed. But that line, it sat in my chest like a cold stone. I found a letter recently, in a shoebox. It was from Arthur, never sent. It said, Lyle thought he was being subtle, but I watched him struggle with those chisels for an hour one night when he thought I was asleep. I let him take the credit because I figured a man who wanted to be an artist that badly deserved the burden of the lie. Onion, ungendo, benins away, benibadyanwa. I learned that you can't build a reputation on someone else's sweat without the salt eventually rotting the foundation. That's the truth of it. But the harder truth, the one I'm still trying to say, is that I was so terrified of being ordinary that I let my father-in-law die a ghost in his own workshop. But you might still have time. Here is what I want you to do this week. Find the person you've been protecting with a lie. Your spouse, your kid, your partner. And I want you to say these exact words. I told you that because I was ashamed of the truth, not because I was worried about you. It's going to be clunky. It's going to be uncomfortable. They'll probably look at the floor and say, I know. And there will be this silence. Don't try to fill it. Just sit there. Let the clock tick 12 times. I still live in the duplex. The other side is rented to some kids who play loud music, but I stay. Every Tuesday, I drive down Route 42 past the old fairgrounds. It adds 22 minutes to the trip. I don't need to go that way, but I do. I stare at the empty gravel lot where the craft tent used to stand in 1987. I listen to the rhythmic, hollow thump-thump of my tires over the expansion joints on the bridge. If you've lived through something like this, if you've ever taken credit that wasn't yours just to feel like you belonged, leave a comment. I'd like to know I'm not the only one sitting in the silence. And if you want to hear more stories from people who waited too long to be honest, subscribe. There's a form in the description if you have a story of your own you need to get out. I think I'll go polish those chisels now. Not because I'm going to use them, just because they're the only part of Arthur I have left that I haven't lied about yet. I still live in the duplex. The other side is rented to some kids who play loud music, but I stay. Every Tuesday, I drive down Route 42 past the old fairgrounds. It adds 22 minutes to the trip. I don't need to go that way, but I do. I stare at the empty gravel lot where the craft tent used to stand in 1987. I listen to the rhythmic hollow thump-thump of my tires over the expansion joints on the bridge.